Part 10. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 93. This matter was a sure thing. They even arranged for someone to take the lead in mortgaging the title deed, who knew that someone would come out to make trouble, and the other party was still a child. Not only Wu Shanke was angry, those country gentry now looked at Mu Yangling as if they were killing their father and enemy. Isn't cutting off people's fortunes the same as killing one's father? This time the barbarians attacked the city by accident, but they had planned to buy more land slaves, but the peasants regard the fields as eyeballs, and unless there is a big change in the family, someone will sell them for no reason land. In the past, they could buy by force or borrow at high interest rates, but since Qi Ziyuan was stationed in Xingzhou Mansion, they had to be more careful in their actions. It is said that military officers are not allowed to interfere in local government affairs, but his father is Yushi Zhongcheng, and it is his duty to impeach officials, so they really dare not offend him too much. As for the local gentry, although they looked down on Qi Ziyuan, they still had soldiers in their hands, and they could tell who was strong and who was weak. It's so easy for a child to mess up an opportunity to plot these muddy legs above board, and they can't help but hate her. Mu Yangling ignored their gazes and went back to the general's mansion with Mu Shi. You will offend both Wu Shanke and the squires in Xingzhou Mansion just by making a sound. Fan Zijian's playful voice came from behind. Mu Yangling turned around and saw Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian looking at her with smiles. Mu Shi hurriedly bowed his hands and saluted. I've seen the two young masters, but the youngest girl is so shameless, I made them laugh at me. I'm afraid this matter will affect the family. We will move out later. Am I still afraid that they won't succeed? Qi Heiran waved his hand and said, Uncle Mu just stays here, as long as he wants. He looked at Mu Yangling appreciatively. You're right, and Zijian also said that this was what they colluded with before. It's a pity that my elder brother can't interfere with local government affairs, otherwise I have to join them. Emperor Sejong legislated to restrict the behavior of officials, advocated the rule of law, and was more tolerant to the common people. However, Emperor Jiaozong believed that the country's destruction was mostly caused by unruly people and generals, so he imposed more restrictions on military officials, and even transferred all the troops stationed at the border. Prevent civil uprisings. Had it not been for Emperor Sejong's decree not to change the constitution easily before his death, Emperor Jiaozong might have to reenact the law. Therefore, the current national conditions in Dazhu are very strange. There is Dajin in the north, Xixia and Tubo in the west, and Dali in the south. The emperor of Zhou dynasty was weak. Don't offend the neighboring countries too much, and at the same time prevent the generals who lead the army from becoming too big. As for the common people, the emperor of the great Zhou dynasty was able to scrape a little more, and all kinds of strange taxes appeared. The strangest thing is that the freedom of speech in Dazhu is so great that even Mu Yangling can't speak. The people scolded corrupt officials and the king was stupid, and paid taxes with money. The emperor was scolded by the people to the gate of the palace, he didn't even fart, turned around and wanted to punish himself. The confrontation between civil servants and military officials has reached an unprecedented height. It has become a common practice for the emperor not to allow military officials to intervene in local affairs. But the fall of Mingshui County was caused by the county magistrate leading people away. Could he just let him go? If Qianshu hadn't taken away most of the yamen servants, Mingshui County wouldn't have been captured so quickly. Qi Heiran snorted coldly. Of course this matter can't be left alone, my elder brother has already written a paper to impeach him. How long can the dog official hide? Seeing that the streets were full of disaster victims, Qi Heiran escorted them to the general's mansion, said, however, your food for disaster relief is enough. My elder brother said that these gentry and Wu Shanke have agreed a long time ago. It is difficult for you to get food from Wu Shanke. Qi Heiran looked around, then lowered his voice and said, we have our west camp stationed in Fukan, it is impossible for you to riot and force him to submit. Mu Yangling's face was full of surprise. who said we were going to riot. Mu Yangling was very happy to move her lips, but she would be a rebellion if she moved her hands. She was not tired of working. Chi Heiran had an expression of "don't lie to me," and said, "You almost moved your fists just now, aren't you going to riot?" Mu Yangling snorted and said, "I'm not going to do it, and I'm not a fool to do it with an official. The Mu family has no land, and it is impossible to sell themselves to be slaves." 2 days earlier, Xu Wanyang had mentioned that she wanted to go south, and Mu Shi also agreed. Now they just wait for the people in Linchan village to settle down and leave. Xingzhou Mansion is now a border gate, and there must be more and more Hu people going south to Daikogu in the future. In the past, only Xu Wanyang, Xiaoboan, Mu Shi, and Mu Yangling could protect them, but now they have twins, and they don't have 3 heads and 6 arms. Where can we protect so many people? The best way is to stay away from here, go south, and find a place with beautiful mountains and rivers and hunting to resettle. Xu Wanyang has nothing to do here. Mu Shi is more of a responsibility to Linchan village, but his feelings are weak. Now he is only waiting for the Linchan villagers to settle down. He has given his parents an explanation. Although Mu Yangling was reluctant, he understood his parents' decision. Since he would never live in Xingzhou Mansion in the future, why should he be afraid of offending the squires here? Their power is only within 1 county of this prefecture, so there is no need to worry now. They live in the Qi Mansion. Military officials and civil servants are at odds with each other. It doesn't matter if she adds fuel to the flames. Thinking of this, Mu Yangling looked at Chi Heiran sincerely and said, "Thank you." Chi Heiran was confused. "Thank me for what?" "Thank you for allowing me to take advantage of your power," Mu Yangling said with a smile. "If I didn't live in Qi Mansion, I wouldn't dare to yell at Wu's Hifu and those squires." Chi Heiran was taken aback for a moment, and then he came to his senses, and then he waved his hand and said, "What's the matter? You just use your power and see who dares to bully you." Fan Zijin wanted to step on him. Once this big talk came out, what if Mu Yangling really bullied others? Mu Yangling laughed, and said equally boldly, "Don't worry, I won't be polite." Chi Heiran saw that she was in good spirits. His heart moved. He pulled her to avoid Mu Shi and asked in a low voice, "Are you healed from your injury now?" "It's almost there, what's the matter?" With itchy hands, Chi Heiran secretly glanced at Mu Shi, and lowered his voice, "Let's go to the school grounds to compete." Chi Heiran had wanted to compete with Mu Yangling for a long time, but he couldn't find a chance. This time, he lived in his house, but he was injured. He had been waiting for this opportunity. Mu Yangling also wanted to experience ancient kung fu, which is something in legends. He also glanced at his father, and nodded slightly when he saw that he was looking at the things on the booth with Fan Zijin. Mu Shi on the side took the splashing drum from Fan Zijin's hand with an embarrassed face, and said, "Thank you Mr. Fan, you already have 2 children, so you don't need so many." Fan Zijin smiled lightly and said, "Children, prepare a few more, and the rest can be used when they have younger brothers and sisters." When Mu Shi heard about it, he had no choice but to accept it, while Fan Zijin looked sideways at the 2, seeing that they had made an agreement. He stopped helping them attract Mu Shi's attention. When Mu Yangling went back, he changed into light clothes and ran to the school grounds. Chi Heiran was already waiting there, and even Fan Zijin changed into a martial arts uniform and stood there. Seeing Mu Yangling approaching, Chi Heiran showed a big smile, as bright as the sun in the sky, almost blinding Mu Yangling's eyes. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 94. Mu Yangling looked at the weapons on both sides of the school field with bright eyes, and asked, "What weapons are you good at?" "Sword and spear." Chi Heiran picked out a spear, danced a gunflower, and asked with a smile, "What about you?" Mu Yangling looked at those weapons regretfully, and said, "I'm good at using bows and short knives, daggers are the best. In addition to marksmanship, Mu Yangling is best at close combat, and his weapons are naturally daggers or short knives. Chi Heiran's eyes became brighter. My archery skills are also very good, let's compete in a while. Chi Heiran asked horizontally, shall we learn? I want to see your marksmanship first, and then we can learn from each other. Fan Zijian shook his fan and laughed, this is a bit unfair to Heiran. The corner of Mu Yangling's mouth twitched slightly, looking at the folding fan in his hand, and said, don't worry, I just want to see his marksmanship. If you think it's unfair, I can play my moves later. It's a deal. After Chi Heiran finished speaking, he threw out his spear and danced in the field, like a dragon encircling his body. The spear pierced through the air, and Mu Yangling could feel the force in it. His eyes lit up, and he concentrated on it. Look up. Qi Ziyuan and Rongxian Zhang Ziyi looked down from a high place. Zhang Ziyi praised, good marksmanship, fourth young master's marksmanship is not worse than Yuan's. The corners of Qi Ziyuan's mouth twitched in joy, proud in his heart, but he said in his mouth, Yuan's gun is invincible on the battlefield. Heiran is still young, how can it compare with Yuan's gun? The unspoken meaning is that when he grows up, he will be able to compare with Yuan Jiaqiang. Rongxian rubbed his nose and looked down at the field. Mu Yangling had already set up his posture to practice. When Zhang Ziyi saw Mu Yangling's punches and strokes, he laughed out loud, how can this Miss Mu learn this kind of boxing? I'm afraid she will be knocked down before she punches, but it's a good thing she hasn't walked in the rivers and lakes. Qi Ziyuan also laughed, shook his head slightly, and said, she's not from the Jianghu, she just needs to learn some boxing skills to defend herself. Before he finished speaking, the smile on Qi Ziyuan's face gradually faded away, and he looked at the girl solemnly. Next, Mu Yangling's punches are getting faster and faster. Rongxian and Zhang Ziyi looked at each other, both confused, what's wrong? Qi Ziyuan took a closer look, almost following Mu Yangling's movements, and said solemnly after a while, it is true that this kind of boxing cannot be used in the rivers and lakes, but it can be used in the army. Then he turned around and went down, let's go, let's take a closer look. Fan Zijian lost interest after reading it for a while. This is just an ordinary boxing technique, not even comparable to the few basic boxing books in his hand. Qi Heiran looked at it with a serious face, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. He studied martial arts since he was a child, and at the age of 3 he could hold a wooden sword and follow behind his uncle to make gestures, so he found out when Mu Yangling made gestures to the 5th form. The boxing technique she practiced looks simple, but it attacks people's weaknesses. It may not be worth mentioning in Jianghu, but it is very applicable in the army. Kung Fu in the Jianghu can win the first rank of a general in an army, but that is only the success of one person. Qi Heiran is a natural general, and what he pursues is the strength of his soldiers. There will be only one general, but thousands of soldiers. Mu Yangling's movements are simple and powerful, which invites people's weaknesses. Because it is easy to learn and slow, it is suitable for large-scale drills. If the whole army learns it, when he confronts the barbarians again, he will not believe that the 5 of them can't kill them. 1. Qi Heiran looked at her with glowing eyes, who taught you this boxing technique? Can I learn it? If he can learn it, then Zijian and the elder brother can learn it, and then slowly spread it out. This is military boxing. I don't know who created it. Anyway, I learned it. Fan Zijian looked at her suspiciously, but Qi Heiran's focus was on the word military boxing. Military boxing? Isn't that the boxing method learned by the army? Mu Yangling nodded, exactly, the fighting skills are particularly excellent. It's impossible to deal with people like you who can fly, but it's enough to deal with some non-Jianghu people. That's enough. How many people in this world are from the Jianghu, and how many of them can learn the best kung fu in the Jianghu? My eldest brother and I are still under the care of my uncle's family, otherwise we can only know some boxing kung fu. Qi Heiran threw away the spear, Why don't we fight against each other? Okay, Mu Yangling nestled his fist and said cheerfully, you can use your internal strength to strengthen yourself, I have great strength. Chi Heiran also wanted to know how strong Mu Yangling was, so when he punched, he used 50% of his internal strength. Who knew that Mu Yangling grasped his fist fearlessly and pulled him forward, with a kick towards him, Chi Heiran immediately flew up and dodged like a swallow. The foot kicked by Mu Yangling landed on the ground, and the ground under his feet made a dull sound. Fan Zijian. Looking at the people who had already huddled together, he didn't want to talk anymore. Mu Yangling didn't use all her strength. She didn't know how strong Chi Heiran was. After the two tried each other's tricks, they probably knew how much the other party could withstand her own strength. Chi Heiran finally used 100% of his internal strength, while Mu Yangling only used 60% of his strength, more than enough to match Chi Heiran. When the two fought together, there were some skills and tricks at the beginning, but in the end they almost recruited the flesh to fight together. Fan Zijian, who was on the sidelines. He felt that his teeth were a little sore. At the end of the fight, Chi Heiran burst into laughter and shouted, Shuang, we will come again next time. Mu Yangling touched the wound on his waist and said, then you may have to wait for a long time. What's wrong? The wound is open, Chi Heiran asked nervously. No, but at least it won't get better so quickly. Heiran, Miss Mu's injury is still not healed, how can you compete with her? Chi Ziyuan, who had been watching for a long time, walked over. Mu Yangling hurriedly smiled and said, General Chi, my injury is almost healed. Although it's almost recovered, it's still not suitable for strenuous exercise. I'll ask the doctor to show you later, Chi Ziyuan said with a smile. Miss Mu, I think you were able to do a job with ease just now, which shows that you have a strong kung fu. Brother, although she doesn't know internal force, she is born with great strength, which is almost the same as internal force, and even has an advantage over me and others who possess internal force. We have to separate our minds to control internal force, but she doesn't use it. Chi Heiran was very envious. It would be great if I was also born with supernatural power. Brother, don't our ancestors have the blood of Hu people? Rongxian lowered his head a few times and shrugged his shoulders. Chi Ziyuan had bulging veins on his forehead. If he hadn't been worried about outsiders, he would have wanted to beat this kid up. Fan Zijian rolled his eyes bluntly, glanced at Rongxian a few times, but did not hit anyone. Mu Yangling said seriously, it's not that the barbarian is born with supernatural power, but I heard from my father that there are several warriors with natural supernatural power in the tribe of my great-grandfather. If you really want it, you can find that tribe in the future. Then marry their offspring, maybe the little baby born will inherit divine power. Chi Heiran blinked, but Huron's daughter is so strong, I don't like it, so I might as well marry you. Onlookers. As a parent, Chi Ziyuan looked at his innocent and ignorant younger brother, and felt extremely sad. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 95. Miss Mu, can you teach us the martial art boxing? I want to try to see if it is suitable for soldiers to learn. Chi Ziyuan was much more honest than Chi Heiran, and immediately proposed the idea of trying it out. Mu Yangling understood just after a moment of stupefaction, nodded and smiled and said, of course it can, as long as it can help you. They must learn military boxing in the army, but there are more ancient martial arts. Mu Yangling is not sure that there is no more suitable boxing method in the army. As a general of the army, Chi Ziyuan obviously knows it better. Mu Yangling thought for a while and said, then I will teach Mr. Chi from tomorrow, and I will leave after he has learned it. Chi Ziyuan thought she was going to leave the general's mansion and go back to Linshan village, so he smiled and said, your Linchin village has been burned down, why don't you live in the general's mansion first, and go back after spring comes? We want to wait for the folks in Linchin village to settle down before moving south. Moving to the south, Chi Ziyuan paused with a smile and asked, are you leaving Seeing Joe mansion? Mu Yangling nodded, with a bit of reluctance on his face. Yes, the first snow this year was only a month earlier, and the barbarians went south to hunt grass valleys. I'm afraid there will be a severe drought after summer, and the barbarian offenders will only be worse. Seriously, our family has many children, and my father is afraid that he won't be able to protect us, so he has to go south. Although it will be difficult to leave our hometown, it is better than losing our lives. Who said there will be a severe drought after summer? Chi Ziyuan asked. Rong Zi also looked over with concern. Mu Yangling's face was a little embarrassed. This is my guess, it may not be true. Chi Ziyuan slowed down his expression, and asked in a gentle voice, I don't know how Miss Mu deduced it from. Mu Yangling said truthfully, the first snow this year was 1 month earlier than in previous years, and it fell for 5 days in a row. Now the snow outside is still a finger deep. My uncle said, according to the older generation, according to my experience, there will definitely be less rain in the coming year. If I am unlucky, I am afraid that there will be drought again. But I thought, there is a lot of rain in the sky, and the snow is rainwater. Now so much snow has fallen in advance. There will be less rain that day, and the river will rise when the snow turns into water in spring, but in previous years, it is the time when the rain is the most in summer, so how can there be rainwater falling? Mu Yangling explained the principle of the conservation of rainwater in a simple way. Chi Ziyuan and Rong Zi laughed when they heard her child's thoughts. Your child's family thinks a lot. Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin believed it. Fan Zijin said, cousin, I think what she said is good, it's better to take precautions earlier. Chi Ziyuan couldn't help laughing, feeling that his cousin usually looked steady, but he was still a child after all. He believed even such words, but he knew his younger brother and cousin's stubbornness. If he didn't take it to heart, these two boys would have to pester him all day long, so Chi Ziyuan nodded and said, okay, I will take care of it. As soon as this remark came out, the 3 children were relieved. After Chi Ziyuan saw Director Zhu, he said, the Mu family will go south in a while, you pack a high-quality Chenyi, and give it to them when they leave. I wish. The manager hurriedly responded, young master, don't worry, the slave will be ready. Rong Zi said, the Mu family wants to go south, but I'm afraid it won't happen in the short term. Why? Rong Zi described what happened at the gate of the government office today, and said, Wu Shanke obviously wants to conspire with the gentry for their fields, and will not provide food for disaster relief. The Mu family wants to wait for the people in Linchin village to settle down. I'm afraid some people will wait if we leave again. Chi Ziyuan's face was filled with anger. They will take advantage of the fire to rob, they are simply worse than the Tartars. That can't be helped, it is impossible for us to interfere in local government affairs. Chi Ziyuan looked serious, and asked, if most of the land in Xingzhou prefecture is in their hands, do you think we can still receive our military salary next year? Rong Zi immediately said, we must not let them succeed, I will discuss it with my staff. Only then was Chi Ziyuan satisfied. These people even evade the national tax, not to mention the tax that involves military pay. They always avoid it whenever they can. Rioting without food. Wu Shanke thought he could do whatever he wanted because he couldn't meddle in local government affairs. Chi Ziyuan has never been someone who can suffer losses, so he asked Zhang Ziyi to lead people to surround the Fukan that day, under the euphemistic name of arresting Qian Shu, the former magistrate of Mingshui County who was collaborating with the enemy. Qian Shu lost the city and fled, which can be said to be dereliction of duty, but Chi Ziyuan can also say that he was collaborating with the enemy and traitorous, and deliberately let the golden soldiers enter the city. Wu Shanke shut him out of the city gate back then, The debt has not yet been settled. Qi Ziyuan didn't mind stirring up the water even more. But Wu Shankei in the government office was as uncomfortable as swallowing a fly. He slapped the table angrily. Qi Ziyuan is too deceitful. Wu Shankei was so angry that he said, "Not only did I take a picture of a little boy to make trouble for me, but he even dared to send soldiers to surround my government office. He is trying to rebel. I want to join him and let the Holy Majesty decide for me." Master Huang wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and warned in a low voice, "My lord, the money tree is still in the government office. We can't let Qi Ziyuan arrest him from the house, otherwise he will be charged with crimes, and he will definitely be imprisoned you." Master Huang didn't think His Majesty would listen to Wu Shankei's one-sided words. After all, Qi Ziyuan's reason for besieging the government office was very good, and the most terrible person was actually in the government office. But Wu Shankei's attack on Qi Ziyuan was all conjecture, without evidence. Master Huang regretted that Wu Shankei didn't insist on persuading Qi Ziyuan when he locked Qi Ziyuan outside the city gate last time, otherwise the relationship between the two would not have been so deep. Qi Ziyuan has been here for 4 years, and he has dealt with the other party for 4 years, and he understands him better than the magistrate. Qi Ziyuan looks generous and upright, but he is the master who never suffers. Wu Shankei offended him, and he can remember this grudge for 10 years. Then what do you think we should do? Now the government office is full of his people, how can we send them away? Wu Shankei asked irritably. Master Huang was silent for a moment, and said, "My lord, why don't you dress up and go out to question him? Let Jianshu go out with you as a yamen servant, and let him leave halfway. As for his family, outsiders don't know it. Lock them up." "Okay, just do as you said, but I went to ask him what. Whether you can see General Qi is a question. Your Excellency, just ask what you said about General Qi just now. It is best to bring the child who questioned General Qi this morning, so that he can explain to Master He Yuan why and others." Wu Shankei nodded in satisfaction. "That's right, that kid surnamed Mu is really abominable. Remember, next year her family's tax will be 30% higher, and the village where she lives will be 20% heavier." Master Huang opened his mouth, and finally bowed his head in response. Wu Shankei made Jianshu pretend to be a yamen servant, and took him out swaggeringly. Mr. Huang followed him closely. As soon as he went out, he met Zhang Ziyi, who was sitting on the horse. Wanting Jianshu to go back quickly, Wu Shankei stepped forward and shouted aggressively, "Zhang Ziyi, you are just a school captain. Not only did you not kneel when you saw this officer, but you even sat on the horse. It is simply unreasonable." Jianshu hurriedly followed behind Wu Shankei. Master Huang, who wanted to hold Jianshu. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 96. Zhang Ziyi chuckled, "Oh, it turned out to be the magistrate. Sorry for my clumsy eyesight, I really didn't see it all at once, my little eyes looked back, and these eyes were stuck on the person behind you. Forgive me for not seeing you for a while." Saying "please forgive me," but didn't even get off the horse, and waved directly, "Boys, open your eyes and take a closer look. Is the man in the yamen behind the magistrate? Is it a money tree collaborating with the enemy and traitorous country?" Jianshu was shocked, and sat down on the ground, pleading, "I didn't collude with the enemy, I didn't." Then he hugged Wu Shankei's thigh and cried, my lord, I didn't collude with the enemy, I did." "You are timid, you just lost the city and fled, you really did not betray your country, you must save me, I am the uncle of the young master." Wu Shankei's face turned pale and white, and he scolded, "What are you yelling about? Go away!" turning his head and looking at Zhang Ziyi with anger on his face. "Zhang Ziyi, you are not worthy of talking to me. Let your general come." Jianshu is the local officials are under the jurisdiction of the officials, and it is not your turn to send them down. Zhang Ziyi's face slowly darkened, he looked at Wu Shankei coldly, and said slowly, "Master Wu, the money tree is under your control," but he allowed the Jin soldiers to enter the city, and collaborating with the enemy and betraying the country involves the Ministry of War. We adults have the right to inquire. Now the money tree didn't go anywhere, and fled to you. I remember that when General Qi returned to the city for rescue, he was locked outside the city gate by the magistrate. I'm afraid that Xing Zhou Mansion will also be captured by Jin soldiers. Master Huan couldn't help closing his eyes. The thing he was most worried about happened. Qi Ziyuan failed to protect the prefectures and counties due to his dereliction of duty, but it is also a fact that he was locked out of the city gate and missed the opportunity. The court most likely would not convict him, and Wu's Hifu, who ordered the city gate to be closed to prevent anyone from entering the city, was suspended. In addition, Qian Shu is Wu Shankei's favorite student, and he abandoned the city and fled. Qian Shu's concubine's sister is now the third aunt in the family, so it shouldn't be too easy to frame her. Cold sweat also broke out on Wu Shankei's forehead, but he couldn't say that he was ordered by others. Once he said this, he was guilty even if he was not guilty. Now he can only push the matter to the soldiers guarding the city. Come here, take Qian Shu back for interrogation, Mr. Wu. If you have any questions, just come to Xieying and ask. The soldiers rushed up and pulled out Qian Shu, who was hiding behind Wu Shankei. Qian Shu hugged Wu Shankei's thigh tightly and cried, "My lord, save this officer. I was wronged. I really did innocent. Haven't you eaten? You have been arresting everyone for a long time, and you have torn the clothes of the prefect of Wu. Why don't you quickly pull them out for me?" The two soldiers who came here looked at each other, and with great force, they not only pulled out the money tree, but also tore the clothes of the prefect Wu. Zhang Ziyi looked at Wu's Hifu's embarrassed appearance with satisfaction. Qian Shu was dragged to the west camp, and when he saw the covetous soldiers, he bowed with a bitter face. The lower officials really did not collude with the enemy and betray the country, really not. Qi Ziyuan paced over, walked around him 3 times, and said with a smile, "Of course I know that you can't collude with the enemy and betray the country. You don't have the skills yet, but you need to live in Xieying for a while. By the way, the clothes of our soldiers are just right. There is a shortage of people to wash. Before beheading, you should contribute to us." Qian Shu's legs trembled slightly, and his voice trembled, "Chop, behead." Qi Ziyuan looked at him with a half-smile, "Why, do you think you can still live? If you run away from the city, if you escape without a trace, change your name and surname and no one will know, that's all. You just ran to the prefect of Wu now. You should be glad that I didn't force you to admit the crime of collaborating with the enemy and traitorous country, which is a crime against the 9 clans." Qian Shu fell to his knees with a plop, feeling infinite regret in his heart. Qi Ziyuan snorted coldly, turned around and left, and told Zhang Ziyi, "Take him down, and do whatever dirty work you have recently." Zhang Ziyi responded, watched Qi Ziyuan leave, squatted in front of Qian Shu, twitched the corner of his mouth, and said, "Do you know how many people died in Mingshui County?" Qian Shu stared at him blankly. In the 3 townships, the number of people who survived in the end was less than 2/3 of the previous township, especially in Qilai Township. Almost all the villages were burned by the Golden Soldiers. If you hadn't fled with most of the government servants in the end, they could have been spared. Just half an hour, just hold on for another half an hour and our reinforcements will arrive. Tell me, should you kill them or not?" Qian Shu murmured, I didn't do it on purpose, I just don't want to die." Zhang Ziyi got up, looked at him condescendingly, and said, "No one wants to die, but because of you, so many people died. You should kill, and you should contribute to us before you die." In fact, in Zhang Ziyi's view, not only Qian Shu should be killed, but Wu Shankei should be killed too. If he hadn't locked the general outside the city gate, they wouldn't be so passive. Why did it take so long for reinforcements to be dispatched? Wu Shanke panicked, looked at the victims surrounded outside the government office, gritted his teeth, and said, "Master Huang, why don't we take out some food to help the victims? It doesn't matter if they are always surrounded outside." Ever since Mu Yangling broke the grain relief depot, those disaster victims refused to mortgage their land deeds, but they gradually surrounded the government office, and they couldn't be driven away no matter how hard they tried. Surrounded by a group of hungry victims outside, Wu Shanke couldn't sleep well at night, and couldn't stand it after only 2 days. Master Huang knew the plan of the prefect Wu and the squires. After hearing the words, he thought about it and said, "I'm afraid they will have opinions." "I still have an opinion. The disaster victims don't surround their homes," Wu's Hifu circled around. "If you ask me, they are ruthless. The interest they set is higher than usury. As long as they are not stupid, who would borrow food from them? Either starve to death, or borrow food. As long as they are hungry, they will naturally resign." Wu's Hifu sneered, "In addition to being soft, they will also riot. We who live behind the government office will be the first to suffer. Your Excellency, why not mention it to General Qi and let him send troops to protect him?" Wu's Hifu rolled his eyes and said, "We are both enemies of life and death, do you think he will agree?" "Your Excellency didn't mention it, how do you know he won't agree?" Master Huang pointedly said, "My lord will cooperate with General Qi for a long time in the future, and next year's military salary will have to be raised by you." Wu's Hifu pondered, and asked, "Do you really think it's feasible?" Master Huang nodded slowly, "But you can give it a try." "Okay, I'll listen to you," Wu's Hifu said. "Go ask someone to prepare the sedan chair, we will go to Xieying right now." "My lord, it's better to go in a carriage. There are disaster victims on this road, so it's safer to take a carriage." Wu's Hifu nodded again and again, "Yes, yes, take the carriage, go and prepare the carriage." At this time, Mu Yangling was taking out the last piece of silver to Mu Shi, and sighed, "Well, don't talk about paying back the medicine, now we don't lend them money and it's fine." Mu Shi collected the money and said nonchalantly, "We can always make money while we're alive. The most important thing now is to buy more food, so that the villagers don't survive the knife of the barbarians and starve to death instead." Gone. Shu Wanyang took out a silver hairpin, "Take this too, if you can buy more." Mu Shi stopped, "It's not bad for you. I bought it for you when we got married. Unless it's for the children, I won't allow you to use it." Shu Wanyang lowered her head and smiled shyly, "You can just buy it for me in the future, isn't it difficult now?" Seeing his parents showing affection, Mu Yangling felt that his teeth were sore, covered his eyes and said, "Oh, the eye of a needle is about to grow." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 97. Shu Wanyang's face turned redder, like a ripe apple. Mu Shi was stunned for a while, and then forgot to reprimand her daughter. Seeing Mu Shi like this, Shu Wanyang's face turned redder, and Mu Yangling hurriedly carried her brother out. When Xiao Bowen was still covering his eyes outside, Mu Yangling knocked off his hand, "Okay, don't cover it, your fingers are wide enough to stuff a rabbit, what's the use of covering it?" Xiao Bowen put down his hand and retorted, "I learned from you, and you're lying, how could you fit a rabbit in front of your fingers?" "That's an exaggeration, not a lie, that's enough, stop talking nonsense, go and see how cousin Lang and the others are doing." Mu Yangling pushed him, then turned to look for Lu Yong and the others. The most dangerous Lu Xian has also woken up, and he still has to rest in bed at this time, and now there is a lot of noise outside. The prefect of Wu can't provide relief food, the victims of the disaster are surrounded outside the government office. Qi Ziyuan sent troops to protect the government office layer by layer. The tables of the squires are placed at the gate of the government office, and they can borrow grain as long as they take the title deed as mortgage. This morning, more than a dozen people took the land deeds and went to mortgage them. It was like an opening. The hungry victims all took out the land deeds of their homes or took the road guides to sell themselves to collect food. Even though the elders and bright-minded people among the victims knew that there was fraud, they had to watch helplessly. Originally, they wanted to surround the prefect Wu to force the prefect to provide food for disaster relief, but now they surrounded the soldiers of the Xieying outside. Once there was a conflict, it would be a dead end. Many people vented their grievances on the soldiers of Xieying. Even the villagers in Linshan village feel that Xieying is helping the evildoers. Mu Yangling could more or less guess why Qi Ziyuan did this, but she didn't think Qi Ziyuan would let others take advantage of him like this. Although she and Qi Ziyuan had only known each other for about 10 days and had only met a few times, judging from his actions, this was not a master who is willing to suffer, will probably have trouble later on. Mu Yangling's guess was right. Qi Heiran was so angry that the prefect Wu made his elder brother take such a big blame, so he went straight to beat up the 3 sons of the prefect Wu. Even the youngest 8-year-old was not spared, and he was pinned to the ground. He was beaten so loudly. Qi Ziyuan was carrying his younger brother into the study room and scolding, "You beat people as soon as you beat them, and you won't drag them into the alley. You're good, you beat me in front of so many people, don't you think I'm not causing enough trouble now?" Qi Heiran muttered, "A man is upright." Qi Ziyuan kicked it, and Qi Heiran jumped up to avoid it. His foot almost touched his clothes, and successfully left a blurry footprint on it. Qi Heiran smiled, but didn't touch his butt. Fan Zijian, who was sitting on the sidelines watching, directly turned his head away, ignoring Qi Ziyuan's effortless beating process, and waited until the movement stopped, then turned his head and said, "Cousin, I made Heiran beat people in public." Only then did Qi Ziyuan restrain his anger. "Why? Cousin, everyone knows that Heiran has a quick temper. Wu Shanke framed such a big matter for you. It would be strange if Heiran didn't respond at all. Isn't it better now? Isn't Wu Shanke not even going to the door? Later you give the Wu family just send some medicinal materials over there. Heiran has his own hands, so he just let his 3 sons stay in bed for 4 or 5 days. Qi Ziyuan nodded in satisfaction. Zijian is still smart, and when he turned his head to face Qi Heiran, he straightened his face again. "As long as you have Zijian half as smart, I will be satisfied." Qi Heiran hated Fan Zijian so much, "It's useless no matter how much you like him, I'm your younger brother." After speaking, he pulled Fan Zijian up and ran out. Only an angry Qi Ziyuan was left behind. Qi Heiran dragged Fan Zijian out, and said in disbelief, "Why do you say you are smart? Didn't I always get ahead of you when you were young? I helped you get ahead when you were bullied in school." Fan Zijian looked at him pitifully, and said sincerely, "I never knew you thought so." Qi Heiran was choked for a moment. He couldn't quarrel with Fan Zijian, so he simply said, "Don't talk to me in this tone, I don't understand. If you don't talk well, I won't get along with you. After that, turn around and run." Fan Zijian paced away without any haste. Yan Mo, who was following Fan Zijian, was even more in a hurry. He had served the 2 masters since he was a child, and he knew them very well. No matter how much the 2 quarreled, they would surely get better in half an hour. The most angry time of the 4th son was when the son secretly took his cricket out to play with him to death, and swore he would never talk to him for the rest of his life. That time he was angry the longest, and the 4th master only paid attention to the son after 2 full hours. These 2 have been together since the beginning of playing and crawling. It is always the son of his own family who makes trouble, and the 4th son carries it out. It is the same when he ran away from home this time. Others thought that it was the young master who accompanied the 4th young master to run away from home, but only he knew that it was the young master who urged the 4th young master to run away from home, and even the route was prepared by the young master. At that time, he and Zabai were almost beaten to death, and it was because of a letter left by the young master that he saved his life. Later, the big cousin sent someone back to report the letter, so he was sent by his wife to serve the young master. As for the two servants that fourth young master was serving by his side, who cares if they live or die? Anyway, they are members of the Wu family, and they usually make small reports. Fan Zijian just walked to the door of the study, and saw Chi Heiran standing at the door full of anger. He drifted past him without looking sideways, and said lightly, "Why didn't you run away? You're with me again." Chi Heiran snorted, and said, "Your Excellency, you don't remember villains, tell me the truth, do you have something to hide from me?" Fan Zijian sat down at the desk, poured himself a cup of tea, and said, "Is there anything I'm hiding from you? But there is one thing I haven't had time to tell you." Chi Heiran pulled a stool and sat down in front of Fan Zijian, glared at him and asked, "What does this have to do with me beating Wu Shankei's son?" Fan Zijian glanced at Yanmo, and Yanmo immediately went out to guard the gate for the two of them. Fan Zijian said, "Didn't you notice that Mo Xiang, who was next to my cousin, disappeared after we came back?" Chi Heiran stared at him, not understanding. "I knew you didn't pay attention. Some time ago, my cousin's carrier pigeons didn't stop. These days, even Brother Rong is not here. I guess, my cousin must have made a big move this time. He is doing big things, and small things are inevitable. If there is an omission, I have to fill in the gap for him, and it is only reasonable for you to beat Wu Shankei's three useless sons at this time. Now, not only Wu Shankei can feel relieved, but Xinyuan Mansion may also feel relieved." "What does this have to do with Xinyuan Mansion?" "It's a big relationship," Fan Zijian said with a cold gleam in his eyes. "Cousin and Wu Shankei have worked together for more than 4 years. Although there were minor conflicts before, everyone was friendly. Why did he suddenly lock up his cousin outside the city gate? This is a risk of beheading and ransacking the house, and the only ones who can command him are people from Xinyuan Mansion other than the capital. Last time, I heard from my cousin and Brother Rong that the traitor was in the Xinyuan Mansion, and the capital is too far away, so Wu Shankei couldn't be mobilized in time." Chi Heiran's eyes sparkled. "Mo Xiang went to catch the traitor." Fan Zijian chuckled, "This is my cousin's business. We just need to make trouble for Wu Shankei during this period of time. We beat up his useless son today, and tomorrow we go beat up his brother-in-law. Those who are not members of Lu can be beaten up, but you have to be measured. Just let them lie down for 3 or 2 days, and don't give me any trouble." Chi Heiran clenched his fists smugly. "Don't worry, I'm the best at fighting." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 98. The devastated victims took the land deeds to the table to register, and then put down the things, and then took a bag of grain from behind, and left with a sad face. The faces of the accountants of the country gentry became more and more complacent. All of this was seen by Chi Ziyuan, who was standing in the corner. He also raised the corners of his mouth and said to Zhang Ziyi, "These land deeds will be difficult to get back after they are mortgaged, so why bother holding them, that unrealistic idea. It's better to sell the land and directly exchange it for food." Zhang Ziyi blinked and said, "What the general said is true." Chi Ziyuan. After a while, Chi Ziyuan sighed, half looked up at the sky, his heart twitched. It would be great if Rong Xian was here, but it would be nice if Mo Xiang was there, at least he didn't need to say another word. After Chi Ziyuan finished his depression, he turned his head and smiled lightly at Zhang Ziyi. "Pass out the words in another version, make sure the victims of the disaster sell their land to these gentry, don't borrow it, the borrowed food is not enough to fit between teeth." Zhang Ziyi suddenly realized, and touched his head in embarrassment. "Yes, General, don't worry, I will definitely take care of it for you," adding, "I will definitely not let anyone find you here." Chi Xiu stared at him from a distance. "We must not let people find Xieying." Yes, yes, they must not even touch their tails." Chi Xiuyuan felt that there was no one around him who could use him, so when he returned to the gate of the mansion, he saw a few people in ragged clothes standing not far away, and Mu Yangling was standing opposite, stuffing a few pieces of broken silver into their hands. Chi Xiuyuan was thoughtful. He knew that the villagers of Linshan village were in the disaster resettlement area in the east of the city, but the Mu family didn't ask him for help, so of course he wouldn't offer it. There are more than 200 people, and they must be poor after eating for a month, so avoid it if you can, but now, it seems that there is no need to avoid it. Chi Xiuyuan took the initiative to step forward, smiled and bowed. Several old men, Lu He and the others hurriedly avoided saluting. You are being polite, the general, and you deserve it. You are the elders, it is only natural that you should receive the courtesy from the younger generation, Chi Xiuyuan said with a smile. A few days ago, the younger generation wanted to invite the elders over to the house as guests, but they have been so busy that they have not been able to spare the time. Although he knew it was a polite remark, Lu He was still so excited that he was speechless after being treated like this by a general. Chi Xiuyuan didn't seem to notice the tattered clothes on them, so he chatted with Lu and them casually. Seeing that Lu and the others were really restrained, Mu Yangling said, Uncle, you go back first, I will take good care of my cousins and the others. Lu He said goodbye in a hurry. Mu Yangling saw that Chi Xiuyuan had been looking at their backs, so he asked suspiciously, General, what's wrong? Chi Xiuyuan seemed to have just come back to his senses. He lowered his head and smiled, looked Mu Yangling squarely and asked, Squires and gentlemen are lending food to the government office, why don't your uncles go? Mu Yangling curled his lips, and said without hesitation, if I borrowed their food, I'm afraid it won't be paid. Seeing the smile on Chi Xiuyuan's mouth, his heart moved, and he tilted his head and asked, the general thinks we should borrow their food. No, Chi Xiuyuan said with a faint smile, I think you should sell the land to them, so that you can get more food. But, Kadai is their lifeblood. If they sell all of them, how will they live in the future? They may not have no land, Chi Xiuyuan said meaningfully, and the person holding the land deed may not necessarily be the owner of the land. Mu Yangling was thoughtful, and when he came back to his senses, Chi Xiuyuan had already gone far. Mu Yangling hesitated for a moment, then turned around and ran after Lu He. You asked us to sell all the land to He Yuan and the others. Lu He stood up in shock. Lu Daqian also stood up in a gaffe, looking at his niece and granddaughter with wide eyes. Mu Yangling nodded solemnly, looked at Lu He persistently, and said, Uncle, it's a good idea to exchange some more. Why? Thinking of Mu Yangling living in the general's mansion, his eyes lit up, did you get some news? Mu Yangling frowned. Chi Xiuyuan reminded her out of kindness. Although she didn't know the reason, she believed him. Chi Xiuyuan also saw Lu He just now, but he didn't mention it face to face, but reminded himself secretly after he left, which shows that he didn't want others to know that he was involved. Mu Yangling naturally couldn't tell him. Uncle, this is all my guesswork. I thought, the folks can't live any longer, so it's better to sell the land. Anyway, we can't plant so much land by ourselves. We'll rent it later. Now, go to land reclamation or something in your spare time, and the days will pass by slowly. Lu He looked at Mu Yangling seriously for a while, then sat down on the rock to smoke. He knew that this was the reason Mu Yangling found out. She is not such a reckless person who dares to raise such a thing based on these conjectures. Come. She must have gotten some news from the general's mansion. Maybe it was General Chi who told her just now, otherwise the child just broke up with them. Why did he catch up with them? The reason why the general's mansion was willing to take in the seriously injured from the Mu family and Dijuan was because a Ling had rescued the two sons of the general's mansion. With this kindness, they would not lie to a Ling. Lu He's hands trembled slightly, and finally he closed his eyes, gritted his teeth and said, it's sold, it's all sold, De Kang, bring our land deed. Father, This land can't be sold. The Lu family has accumulated so much land for 3 generations. If they are all sold, how will future generations live? Lu he looked at him with sharp eyes. I'll sell it if I say so, go and get it. Lu Dakang knelt on the ground for a while, wiping away tears for the last time, went to his bag and took out the title deed, which was wrapped in layers, and handed it to his father on his knees. Lu he took over the title deed, and touched it reluctantly. It was created by his great-grandfathers with one hoe after another. For these lands, the previous generations of the Lu family did not live long, and they were all exhausted. But now, but you have to use these things in exchange for your life. Lu Dakian and Lu Erkin looked at each other, gritted their teeth for the last time, and waved to their sons to find the land deed. Lu Ting and Lu Yuan took it out with red eyes, but they believed in Mu Yangling more than Lu Dakang. Although Aling was young, since she took them into the mountains to hunt, they no longer regarded her as a child. Lu He, Lu Dakian and Lu Erkin expressed their views, and other families also took out the land deeds one after another, but there were some who were unwilling, so they stood aside and did not speak. Lu He was not reluctant, and brought people who were willing to sell the land, and contacted the victims of the disaster in several nearby villages, and went to the government office together to talk to Lu Yuanwei and the others. Selling and borrowing, the one who sells the land will always get more food, right? Lu He sold the land and brought back a few bags of grain. Crying broke out in the area of the victims where they were located. Everyone felt sympathetic to each other. After a while, the victims were detonated, and everyone burst into tears. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 99. But the next day, following the rumors that Zhang Ziyi asked people to spread, they all said that the mortgaged land deeds would never come back, the interest was too high, and they would definitely not be able to pay it next fall. When the time came, the country gentry would definitely give up the land. It was taken back, so it would be better to sell it. So within 2 days, those who went to the gate of the government office with the title deed in their hands did not remortgage, but asked to sell it. If a few squires didn't buy it, they went to find someone else. These squires are not the only ones in Fukan, there are also some rich peasants, small landlords, small merchants, or middle-level squires, they also want to buy land. This is different from what Lu Yuanwei and the others had imagined. The food needed for buying land is different from that for lending. The former is twice as much as the latter. But looking at the victims leaving one after another, Lu Yuanwei gritted his teeth and said, "Buy, otherwise. These mudlegs can be sold in Xinyuan Mansion, you know, there are many people there who want to buy land at a low price." He Yuanwei gritted his teeth and agreed after thinking about it. The corners of Qi Ziyuan's mouth curved even higher. Mu Yangling didn't know what was going to happen, but seeing the big guys busily selling and buying land, he always felt uneasy. She ran to Qi Heiran to inquire about the news. Qi Heiran was having fun beating people these days, and waved his hand indifferently when he heard the words, "What could happen? My elder brother is busy catching traitors these days, how can I have the time to pay attention to it, local government affairs?" "You don't have to worry, Wu Shanke is really going to go too far, I'll write a letter to the capital to impeach him, and see what else he's proud of." Fan Zijian, who was nervous, suddenly relaxed, and stood aside with a smile and nodded. "Heiran and I know many friends in Linen Mansion, and their fathers are all officials in the court. You can give it a try, Miss Mu, don't worry." Mu Yangling looked at Fan Zijian suspiciously. "Is that so? Then why was he nervous just now?" Fan Zijian nodded with a smile. "That's it." Seeing that there was nothing to ask, Mu Yangling could only leave disappointed. Seeing that she was depressed, Qi Heiran didn't understand why, so he quickly chased after her and asked, "What's wrong with you? Didn't you just sell the land? Just buy it back after making money," but Chu Zijian said that the imperial court encourages land reclamation. The income from land reclamation belongs to everyone, and the tax was reduced for the first 2 years. You said it lightly. How else can farmers make money besides farming? Before, when they had land, they couldn't make a few taels of silver a year. Now that they don't have land, it's even difficult for them to eat. Mu Yangling sighed and said, "Do you think it's good to be a tenant of the landlord's family? 60% of the harvest in the field has to be handed over. The landlord will force them to work for him when the farming is busy, and even more so when the farming is off. It's a little bit better than the long-term workers of the landlord's house, not to mention making money. If you don't die from exhaustion, it's the virtues of your ancestors." Chi Heiran was dumbfounded. The tenant is so miserable. Mu Yangling rolled his eyes. Otherwise, what do you think? The tenants don't have to pay the land tax, but the Dante tax and the Ding tax are not less. They only get 40% of the grain a year. After getting rid of these, how much do you think is enough, family food? In our Linchin village, we can eat thick porridge for half a year, black and white steamed buns for 2 months, and various grains for the remaining 4 months. As a tenant, we have to eat bran for at least half a year. Something for pigs. Chi Heiran looked awkward. I don't know, it's easy for me to make money. How about I lend you some? Chi Heiran touched his deflated purse. Mu Yangling glanced at his purse, and said, "Come on, your little money is not enough for our teeth. In fact, I came to see you just to know what will happen and give me a reassurance. In the past 2 days, my heart has always been in a state of turmoil, and I am afraid that I will lead my fellow villagers to a dead end." Chi Heiran was silent for a moment, then said, "You wait, I'll ask my elder brother." "Don't," Mu Yangling held him back. "You also said that the general is busy, so don't make trouble for him. Just forget it if you don't know." Mu Yangling remembered that Fan Zijian's complexion was different just now, and his eyes rolled, whispered in his ear, "Don't ask the general, ask Fan Zijian." Zijian? If he knew, Grandpa would have known the two brothers would tell each other anything. Maybe he just found out, and he hasn't had time to tell you yet. Mu Yangling said, "Go ask him, and tell me if you do." Chi Heiran rolled his eyes and agreed. Poor Fan Zijian thought that Chi Heiran didn't know anything and wouldn't reveal the secret, so he didn't keep up with the two of them, so he was tricked by his brother. Chi Heiran ran to look for Fan Zijian, and asked as soon as they met, "I heard from Mu Yangling that it was the eldest brother who hinted that she asked the people in Linchin village to sell all the land. Do you know why?" Fan Zijian was never on guard against Chi Heiran. He nodded and said, "I know, cousin got some news from the capital. Selling the land is more cost-effective than mortgaging the title deed." Chi Heiran rushed forward. "What news?" Seeing that there were only 2 people in the room, Fan Zijian didn't hide it from him, and said in a low voice, "I told you, you have to keep your mind out and don't let it out." Chi Heiran nodded quickly. Fan Zijian whispered a few words in his ear. Chi Heiran's eyes lit up. "Are you serious?" Fan Zijian nodded with a smile. "Great." Chi Heiran jumped up and said, "When the time comes, I will ask my elder brother to take care of the 4th and 5th battalions." "You think so beautifully. Even Huahui, the first general under my cousin, didn't receive 2 battalions. If my cousin really handed over the 4th and 5th battalions to you, it would be terrible." Chi Heiran pursed his lips, and Fan Zijian sighed and said, "I think my cousin probably wants to hand over the 5th battalion to you. The last time I asked you to go to the 4th battalion, the soldiers in the Western battalion didn't say anything, but they all felt that my cousin was partial to you. This time you have made great achievements, and you have trained the miscellaneous soldiers of the 4th battalion to look like a human being. Everyone is somewhat convinced, but you are only 12 years old, and your cousin can't invite you. You have no body. Official position, it is not appropriate to manage the 4th battalion." Chi Heiran's anxious eyes were red, and he couldn't remember what Mu Yangling entrusted to him, so he immediately shouted, I want to see the results of my master, but I don't want to see who I am, but I want to see, who dares, take over the 4th Battalion. The original soldiers of the 4th Battalion were so poor, old, disabled, weak, and some were so timid that they screamed at the sight of slaughtered chickens. It took him so much effort to clean up the 4th Battalion like a human being. Taken over like this? For the sake of the 4th camp, he skipped classes every 3 days, was beaten up by his elder brother every now and then, and almost stayed in the camp for food and lodging. Is it easy for him? Fanzijin also felt sorry for his partner, but there was nothing he could do. Who told them they were young? There has never been an official in the court at the age of 12, let alone a general. Fanzijin patted his brother on the shoulder and said, wait another 2 years, we will be 14 in 2 years, and then let my cousin seal us up. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 100. Chi Heiran bowed his head and did not speak. Fanzijin saw that he was pretending to be melancholy, so he slapped him directly. Okay, don't feel sad when you come to my cousin. In fact, I think wooing is also good. Almost all of them are locals, and the family can immediately. It turns out that managing them is almost like controlling local snakes. Although they are recruits, as long as you train them, they will definitely be better than the 4th Battalion. Thinking of the strength of Mu Shi and Mu Yangling, Chi Heiran immediately felt happy. You are right, the seedlings of the 5th Battalion are stronger than the 4th Battalion. Chi Heiran knew what he was thinking as soon as he pouted his butt. Fanzijin said leisurely, you think too much, the Mu family will not be incorporated. Chi Heiran smiled, why? Didn't Ms. Mu say she wanted the whole family to go south? Just because of her kindness to us, my cousin won't embarrass them. In fact, Fanzijin really didn't think Mu Yangling had much kindness to them. They had already changed it when they were in Mingshui County. It was their duty to save them this time, but asking them for medical treatment and medicine was a big catching up to the original kindness, right? It's just that Heiran is a fool who thinks that a meal in adversity is like rebirth, and his cousin is also grateful and wants to repay his kindness, so he stands by and watches, happy to make this fool feel at ease. Going south, Chi Heiran was a little sad. They have already made up their minds. I think Xingzhou Mansion is pretty good, much better than Linen Mansion. Linen Mansion is the capital city, the most prosperous place in the world. Only a fool like you would think this wild place is better than the capital city. Chi Heiran stared at him fiercely. Then do you think you like staying in Linen Mansion, or here? Of course it's here, Fanzijin sighed. Although there are no restaurants here, and there are no beauties and beautiful scenery, it's good to be at ease. My cousin loves me again, and there are no messy troubles in Linen Mansion, so naturally it's better here. Only then was Chi Heiran satisfied. That's right, it's better here. The pony that my elder brother chose for me is coming soon. It is a Maxima that cost more than 800 taels of silver, and you will raise it with me when the time comes. I can lend you a ride. Come on, I don't care about it. Fanzijin got up and said, I still like beauties and books. Chi Heiran pouted, you will definitely be like your father in the future. Fanzijin turned cold, and said seriously, no, I won't be as shameless as him. At the very least, I will distinguish between the concubine and the concubine, and give the wife the respect she deserves. Chi Heiran curled his lips, isn't that a group of wives and concubines? With the character of my aunt, she definitely doesn't agree, and there are still conflicts. If the concubine is more arrogant, what's the use of being smart? Chi Heiran advised. Concubine, it is the root cause of a chaotic family. Look at my family and yours, neither one is good. For the sake of future generations, if you can take a concubine, then don't take a concubine. Fanzijin looked at him strangely. It's rare that you have this awareness. Of course, Chi Heiran proudly said, I figured it out a long time ago. A man should focus on making achievements. What are women? They were all 12-year-old boys, and it was the time when they were most interested in the opposite sex. The two young chickens who hadn't eaten meat immediately got together. Fanzigen pulled him and asked, "Then you don't get bored with a woman all day long? Like my father, if you see the spring flowers today, you can go to enjoy the autumn moon tomorrow. If you are only a regular wife, you should be angry with her, happy with her, and angry with her." Chi-Heiran looked at him with the eyes of a fool. "Are there any types of spring flowers and autumn moons in the Kingluchugwan outside? If you get tired of looking at it, go there to seduce your eyes. As long as you don't take it back and no bastard is born, won't the family be peaceful?" Fanzigen looked at Chi-Heiran thoughtfully, and said for a while, "Good idea. That's right, I don't have that much time to talk about things with women. Well, you're going to practice martial arts, and you should hurry to study." After finishing speaking, he waved his hands and was about to leave. Fanzigen said coolly behind him, "I remember the class schedule that my cousin made for you. This afternoon, you are reading university with your husband, right?" Chi-Heiran let go of his feet and ran away. Seeing that he was alone in class in the afternoon, Fanzigen was so angry that he picked up the cup on the table and threw it over. Chi-Heiran laughed loudly, "I haven't memorized the doctrine of the mean yet. What kind of university do you want to learn? You can learn it by yourself. I'm going to tell my cousin that he will punish you for copying the Analects 100 times. Chi-Heiran ran away long ago. Chi-Heiran didn't wake up until he ran to the school grounds. He hasn't told Mu Yangling yet. This matter is confidential, but he has already promised that Mu Yangling will tell her. After hesitating for a long time, he still went to find someone, but he dragged her into the garden and asked her in a low voice to promise not to tell anyone, including her parents. Mu Yangling nodded without thinking. Chi-Heiran looked at her suspiciously, "Don't you doubt it? What do you suspect? I'm going to ask you for peace of mind. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, the land has been sold anyway, and the food has been eaten. I can't regret it even if I want to." Chi-Heiran became even more entangled when she heard her say this, and said after a while, "It's a good thing and a bad thing, anyway. You didn't lose anything by selling the land, but in the end you didn't end up well. Although I think it's a good thing to be a soldier, at least you can defend your family and defend your country. Can you make meritorious deeds? But the common people don't seem to like being a soldier." Mu Yangling's eyes widened. "What is a soldier? What does this have to do with being a soldier?" Chi-Heiran rubbed his nose, leaned close to Mu Yangling's ear and whispered a few words. Mu Yangling only felt a thunderbolt, and his whole body was not well. She didn't cheat the folks in Linshan village, but the old man of the emperor cheated the entire Mingshui county. No, he cheated half of the people in Xingzhou prefecture. Worthy of being a godlike emperor. Chi-Heiran shook his hand in front of her, and said, "You promised me, no one can tell about this." Mu Yangling looked at him with straight eyes, "Then we can't go south either." Mu Yangling was startled, and hurriedly asked, "My brother and sister are still young, so they won't be classified as military households, right?" "Don't worry, my eldest brother will remove you from the list as soon as he hears that you want to move. If you want to leave, you can leave at any time." Mu Yangling was sour and astringent now, and he didn't know what to do. She was a soldier in her previous life, and she didn't think there was anything wrong with being a soldier. In her previous life, being a soldier was an honorable thing. But not here. Serving as a soldier by one person means that all children and grandchildren will serve as soldiers in the future. Being a soldier means being poor and single. Just think of Xiao Bowen standing on the battlefield with a big knife in his hand, covered in blood, and getting old just leaning against the gate of the camp with white hair, and no one around to accompany him filially. Mu Yang felt as if a stone had been crushed in his heart. Therefore, Mu Yangling is very glad that she can go through the back door here, but feels a little sorry for the folks in Linshan village. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 101. 5 days passed, and the victims either mortgaged their land or their people to the squires, and only then did they obtain the capital to survive. After getting the food, everyone started to pack their things and go home. The house was burned down, and it was winter again, so we had to try our best to build a thatched hut for the family to shelter from the wind and snow. And Yuanyi and the others smiled all over their faces, and said with a smile on Wu Shankei's face, "Fortunately, Mr. Wu has helped maintain order these few days." Wu Shankei said absent-mindedly, "Where, this is all my job." Seeing his serious expression, Member Lu asked, "Is there anything bothering you, sir?" Wu Shankei sighed, "Linen Mansion has dealt with the Jin soldiers attacking the city, and today the angels from Xinyuan Mansion will come to announce the decree." So fast, Member Lu was very surprised. Since when did the imperial court become so efficient? Yeah, Wu Shankei didn't expect it to be so fast, and sighed, "I don't know how many people will be returned this time." In fact, what he wanted to say was that he didn't know if he would be replaced, whether he would be dismissed or demoted, but no matter how much he asked, he couldn't hear any news. The unknown is always frightening, and thinking that the ending will be revealed in a short while, I feel even more disturbed. Even though he Yuanyi and they just sent him a lot of money, he is still unhappy, very unhappy. He Yuanyi and the others looked at each other, and their good mood was also affected. They cooperated well with Wu Shankei, and they had invested a lot of money in Wu Shankei over the years. A break-in period is required. It's just that no one expected that 2,000 elite soldiers from Xinyuan Mansion also came with the angel, and they surrounded the city of Fukan as soon as they arrived. Wu Shankei was shocked, and ran to Qi Ziyuan with trembling legs. Qi Ziyuan also came out in surprise. "Why did the angel surround Fukan?" Wu Shankei asked tremblingly, "Does the general not know?" Qi Ziyuan frowned. Wu Shankei's heart became colder. Your Majesty won't get rid of both of us, will he?" Qi Ziyuan said in embarrassment, "Who are you and us? The emperor really dealt with this general because of the siege, and I will deal with you first." After speaking, he threw his sleeves and left. Wu Shankei was not in the mood to quarrel with him at this time, so he trotted to keep up. The angel and Dai Wei who led the troops were already waiting in the government office. It was strange that he Yuanyi and others were also there. Wu Shankei trotted 2 steps forward, and said with an apologetic smile, "I don't know if Angel and General Dai are here. It's really a dereliction of duty for a subordinate official. Why don't you 2 adults go to the mansion to freshen up?" "No need." The angel cast a condescending glance at Wu Shankei, and said, "I still have to go to General Yuan after I announce the decree here, so don't delay." Yes, everything is up to the adults." Wu Shankei hurriedly asked someone to set up an incense table. Qi Ziyuan asked Dai Wei with a cold face, "I don't know what General Dai's soldiers mean by besieging Xingzhou Mansion." Dai Wei snorted coldly, turned his head away and didn't answer, and said to Qi Ziyuan with a smile on his face to Wu Shankei's cold angel, "General Qi is not in a hurry. This is a very good thing. His Majesty is here to relieve your worries." Qi Ziyuan frowned, and he Yuanyi and others who were standing aside also looked at each other, feeling a little ominous in their hearts. In other words, why did the angel decree detain them here? The angel saw their doubts, but their identities were not enough for him to answer, so he just glanced at them with a half smile. "What should I do if the ominous premonition becomes stronger?" The imperial decree did come to solve Qi Ziyuan's biggest problem, but it also gave him another problem. The Holy Admiral classified half of the people in Xingzhou Mansion as military households, and because of this military disaster, they became the household registrations of the victims, except for the only sons and widows. All were classified as military households. This time the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Households have reformed the military system. In the past, as a soldier, one person left his hometown to join the army. Maybe he would never return to his hometown in his life. Except for the school lieutenants and a small number of soldiers who survived, many of them were not married before joining the army. Few people are able to marry wives and have children because they are poor in the army. Some people are soldiers because they want to have a good meal, and some people are soldiers because they are conscripted. Wars in the country have been going on all the time. In the past few years, many household registrations have been conscripted into the army. However, the royal family is extravagant and the treasury has always been empty. Ordinary soldiers were paid once, but they were still half paid. As for food and grass, they were lucky enough to be able to eat and drink enough. This time the weather changed suddenly, and the Qin Tianjian had predicted that every time the Hu people in the north would go south to plunder, so the emperor blocked it as soon as he got the news, but he was actually worrying about the army's food and grass. He still has to celebrate the new year, but there is no money in the treasury. Once there is a war, where will the food and grass come from? And, what about next year? What about the next year? Not only are the generals worrying about food, grass, and military pay, but he is also worried. The emperor gathered Qin Fang and other confidants together, and finally came up with a way to let the soldiers worry about their own military pay and food. The emperor planned to allocate a large piece of land for them to plant by themselves, and with the ink pen on the booklet, tens of thousands of families in the world became military households. One strong man from each household joins the army, and the rest will farm in the rear. After the harvest, 40% will be sold to the army, and the remaining 60% will go to the military households themselves. The army's salary, food, and grass will all come from this 40%, can you? Enough food and grass depends on the ability of each army. The emperor just dropped his hand and didn't care. But when the emperor made this policy, it was just in time for the Jin soldiers to attack Xinzhou prefecture, and Mingshui County became a disaster-stricken county. Worry about it? Qi Ziyuan was very worried at first, but Wu Shanke and He Yuanwei solved this problem for him. Wu Shanke and He Yuanwei designed the disaster victims, but in his eyes it was Wu Shanke and He Yuanwei who took out food and helped him arrange his future subordinates. At this time, looking at the pale faces of Wu Shanke and the gentry, Qi Ziyuan finally dissipated the anger of many days. Qi Ziyuan was very happy, but he asked the angel coldly, even if the military system is changed, these military households will have to wait until next autumn. What about the previous military pay and food? Also, the seeds, farm tools, and cattle after the spring, my lord, I will only be able to fight, not to farm. Angel was embarrassed for a while, and he also knew that this matter was a bit embarrassing for him, but this decree was made by the Holy One himself, and all armies will follow this system from now on. It's because there is no food left. Since the system has been reorganized at this time, the generals will naturally start raising the military pay and food, and all armies follow this rule. Seeing that Qi Ziyuan's face became even uglier, the angel hurriedly said, "But General Qi, don't worry, this good breed, farm tools, cattle, and other things that the imperial court will provide, they will definitely arrive at Xinzhou Mansion before the beginning of spring." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 102. This year, it seems that only a quarter of the food and grass that should have been paid to our army by the central government has been paid. When will the rest be paid? This year's local military pay is less than last year, but our army has expanded from the 3rd Battalion to the 4th Battalion, and, in this battle to defend the city, many soldiers died on the battlefield. The court will always give this pension, right? Cold sweat rolled down the angel's forehead, and he said after a while, "General, here, the treasury is empty." "When will the national treasury not be empty?" Qi Ziyuan interrupted the angel's words, and said coldly, I think the Holy Majesty should change to a household minister. The national treasury is empty every year. Haven't you thought about finding the reason? The angel was silent for a moment. Minister of the Ministry of Household Affairs was in charge of Qin Fang, Prime Minister of Qin, and he was the celebrity in front of the Holy Majesty, who would dare to pick his fault. Qi Ziyuan snorted coldly. The angel rolled his eyes, saw He Yuanhui and the others lying limp on the ground, and said in a low voice, General Qi, in fact, Prime Minister Qin has already solved the problem for you, it's just that you have to do the last step. General Dongying Luyi solved it himself, although the method was a bit tougher, it was still a good way. Qi Ziyuan followed his gaze to look at He Yuanhui and the others, with a strange expression on his face. I can do whatever I want. It's better not to go too far, the angel said vaguely. Although the voices of the two were quiet, but He Yuanhui and the others were close to the two of them, they could hear them clearly, and for a moment they felt sadness coming from it. When the angel saw that Qi Ziyuan no longer asked for money or food, he breathed a sigh of relief, puffed out his chest and said, General Qi, Lord Wu, this time I was ordered to escort Jian Shu, the magistrate of Mingshui County, back to the capital. Temporary magistrate of Mingshui County Songji, the county magistrate, is in charge. The official also brought the booklet designated as military land, so you can discuss it with Master Wu. The angel came in a mighty way, left behind a big stall and left in a hurry. Only then did He Yuanhui and the others look up at Qi Ziyuan tremblingly, and asked expectantly, General Qi, this military household matter. Naturally, I would like to obey the holy orders. Master He, Master Lu, and Master Fang, you all seem to be in the roster. Go back and prepare. The expressions of the three of them changed drastically, and they all begged for mercy. General, you see, I have old arms and legs, and I can't even hold a knife. How can I win the battlefield? I am willing to donate food and grass to help the general. Qi Ziyuan said indifferently, the three descendants have countless descendants. If you can't go to the battlefield, don't you still have descendants? You three can just enjoy the blessings at home. There are quite a few concubines and grandchildren of the three of them. It's not that they are reluctant to part with a son and grandson, but once they are classified as military households, the fields under their names will also become military fields, and 40% of the harvest will be taken away. What is the difference between their lives? The other squires who were let go stood with their necks shrunk, for fear that the fire would burn on them. Qi Ziyuan ignored them, only turned his head to Wu Shankei and said, Master Wu, you should order the counties to prepare, and I will send someone to check with you later. After all, turn around and leave. But Dai Wei's soldiers were still surrounded outside, and everyone knew that his move was to prevent the common people from causing chaos. And as soon as Qi Ziyuan left, the meaning of the imperial decree was announced. For a while, the people in the prefecture were full of cries, but there were also bachelors who ran to the street and shouted, this is the time for us to make meritorious deeds. Often, they are thrown away by rotten vegetable leaves as soon as they shout out. No matter how good the imperial decree says, giving the fields and land and returning the seeds and farm tools, for ordinary people, joining the army and fighting means death. Qi Ziyuan acted quickly. Seeing that the people in the city were agitated, he asked Zhang Ziyi to take a booklet and set up a stage in the city, and announced, the Holy One is merciful, and seeing that the people have nothing to support, he issued this decree. For military households, each male has 40 mu, each female has 20 mu, and each minor has 20 mu. This is Yanjai farmland. In addition, each family gets another 100 mu as military farmland. Ladies and gentlemen, you will know that most of you have mortgaged the land deeds. If there is no accident, you can only lease the land or serve as slaves after the spring. If so, why not give it a go? If you make contributions on the battlefield, your family will also have a place to stay, not to mention joining the army. It was originally to protect the family and the country, but now the Tartars are rampant, and if the country does not exist, what is a family? The excited people gradually calmed down, and someone questioned, "We entered the military household, can we really get so many fields?" Zhang Ziyi nodded solemnly, "This is an imperial decree, so it is naturally true." Some people counted with their fingers for a long time and still couldn't figure out how much land they could get from their family, but they also knew that it was impossible for them to work hard for 3 lifetimes, so they couldn't help but wonder, where did the imperial court get so many fields? Someone said from the side, "I heard that He Yuan and the others were also included. They have a lot of money and have not escaped. What can we complain about?" Immediately, someone laughed, "Didn't He Yuan want me to go to the battlefield together? You have a good idea. They have many sons. You can just pick one up. How can you compare yourself to others as a bachelor? I am also happy to be able to go to the battlefield with the son of the landlord's family." The painting style below changed suddenly, and the corners of Zhang Ziyi's mouth twitched slightly as he stood on the high platform, pretending he didn't hear it. Seeing that the people were appeased, Zhang Ziyi breathed a sigh of relief and became happy. But Qi Ziyuan, who returned to the mansion and opened the booklet, was not in a good mood. His finger tapped on the booklet, and a name was written on it, Mu Shi. Mu Shi, he clearly remembered that he had crossed out his name. Although the opponent was strong, he wanted to keep this strong general, but Feng Zhi was not here. The most important thing was that they had favors Yu Heiran and Zijin. Naturally, he is willing to fulfill them, but why does his name appear here? The Mu family seems to have offended some extraordinary people. Qi Ziyuan couldn't figure it out, so he looked for the answer by himself, took the booklet and went to Mu Shi. The Mu family has already packed up their things, and they will leave only after the folks from Linshan village are registered as military households. Mu Shi decides to take Ma Liu's grandfather and grandson with them. The Ma family has no males and belongs to an extinct household, and was not included in the military household, so they are free to come and go. Their land has also been designated as military land. Even if it is not designated as military land, their land deeds are not with them. When they went to the government office to reapply the land deeds, they registered for the first time, and when they asked for the second time, those pieces of land have already belonged to Mr. Liu's family. They know that the land has been invaded, and it is difficult to get it back. Although they are aggrieved, it is difficult for ants to shake the elephant, so they can only recognize it. While worrying about them, Mu Shi felt that Xu Wanyang and the twins were still young, so he proposed to let Malayashi follow. Although Malayashi didn't want to leave his hometown, he agreed for the sake of his 2 granddaughters and livelihood. At this time, they all packed their things, and when they saw Qi Ziyuan coming, they thought it was someone else, so they enthusiastically welcomed him in. Unexpectedly, Qi Ziyuan handed a booklet to Mu Shi, saying, "You have been registered as a military household and given the post of Zioki. I'm afraid you won't be able to leave." The faces of the Mu family changed drastically.